Hello, good afternoon, and my apologies if you were waiting at 3 o'clock and I didn't appear on the Facebook page. That was a technical error on my part. So anyway, welcome to Tea and Chat, and it's lovely to see you here. And I'm here to talk about a little bit of prose, and we've got a selection of poetry events to tell you about as well. So I apologise for being late, but hopefully we can catch up and enjoy the poetry that I have got for you. So the first poem I was going to read is from a book that I know Basil's used before, and this is a little aloud, and it's called For a 5-Year-Old by Fleur Adcock. A snail is climbing up the windowsill into your room after a night of rain. You can call me in to see, and I explain that it would be unkind to leave it there. It might crawl to the floor. We must take care that no one squashes it. You understand and carry it outside with careful hand to eat a daffodil. I see then that a kind of faith prevails. Your gentleness is moulded still by words. From me who have trapped mice and shot wild birds. From me who have drowned your kittens, who betrayed 4 closest relatives, and who purveyed the harshest kind of truth to many another. But that is how things are. I'm your mother, and we are kind to snails. So I quite like that because obviously the mother's doing one thing, telling her child not to harm snails, and then she thinks how awful she's been to others. And that reminded me of another book, another poem that I read many years ago, and that was by D.H. Lawrence, and it's called The Snake. A snake came to my water trough on a hot, hot day, and I in pyjamas for the heat to drink there. In the deep, strange scented shade of the great dark carob tree, I came down the steps with my pitcher, and must stand and wait, for there he was at the trough before me. He reached down from a fissure in the earth wall in the gloom, and trailed his yellow-bound slackness soft-bellied down over the edge of the stone trough, and rested his throat upon the stone bottom. And where the water had dripped from the tap in a small clearness, he sipped with his straight mouth, softly drank through his straight gums into his slack, long body, silently. Someone was before me at my water trough, and I, like a second comer, waiting. He lifted his head from his drinking, as cattle do, and looked at me vaguely, as drinking cattle do, and flickered his 2-forked tongue from his lips, and mused a moment, and stooped and drank a little more. Being earth-brown, earth-golden from the burning boughs of the earth, on the day of Sicilian July, with Etna smoking. The voice of my education said to me, he must be killed, for in Sicily the black snake's innocent, the gold are venomous. And voices in me said, if you were a man, you would take a stick and break him now, and finish him off. But I confess how I liked him, how glad I was he'd come like a guest in quiet to drink at my water trough, and depart peaceful, pacified and thankless into the burning boughs of this earth. Was it cowardice that I dared not kill him? Was it perversity that I longed to talk to him? Was it humility to feel so honoured? I felt so honoured, and yet those voices, if you were not afraid, you would kill him. And truly I was afraid. I was most afraid, but even so honoured still more that he should seek my hospitality from out the dark door of the secret earth. He drank enough and lifted his head dreamily as one who was drunken, and flickered his tongue like a fortnight on the air, so black, seeming to lick his lips, and looked around like a god, unseeing into the air, and slowly turned his head, and slowly, very slowly, as if thrice a dream, proceeded to draw his slow length curving around and climb again the broken bank of my wall face. And as he put his head into that dreadful hole, and as he slowly drew up, snake easing his shoulders and entered further, a sort of horror, a sort of protest against his withdrawing into that horrid black hole, deliberately going into that blackness and slowly drawing himself after, overcame me now his back was turned. I looked round and I put down my pitcher. I picked up a clumsy log and threw it at the water trough with a clatter. I think it did not hit him, but suddenly that part of him that was left behind convulsed in undignified haste, writhed like lightning, and was gone into the black hole, the earth-lit fissure in the wall front, at which in the intense still noon I stared with fascination. And immediately I regretted it. I thought how paltry, how vulgar, what a mean act. I despised myself and the voices of my accursed human education. And I thought of the albatross, and I wished he would come back, my snake. For he seemed to me again like a king in exile, uncrowned in the underworld, now due to be crowned again. And so I miss my chance with one of the lords of life, and I have something to expiate, a pettiness. I think we've all had that when we've come across a creature that we might not like or are a bit scared of, and we've decided to throw something at it, or whether we might kill it, whether it be a fly or a bee or a snake or something else. And I remember reading that poem when I was much younger and feeling really guilty about the last thing that I tried to kill, because we have that power as human beings. So I think it's really, really good, that poem. And that takes us to another one by Jonathan Swift, and this is Resolutions to Be Old, When I Come to Be Old. And this is one to get you thinking as well. Not to marry a young woman, not to keep young company unless they really desire it, not to be peevish or morose or suspicious, not to scorn present ways or wits or fashions or men or war, not to be fond of children or let them come near me, hardly, not to tell the same story over and over to the same people, not to be covetous, not to neglect decency or cleanliness for fear of falling into nastiness, not to be over severe with young people, but to give allowances for their youthful follies and weaknesses, not to be influenced by or give ear to knavish tattling servants or others, not to be too free of advice, not trouble any but those that desire it, to desire some good friends to inform me which of these resolutions I break or neglect, and wherein and reform accordingly, not to talk much nor of myself, nor to boast of my former beauty or strength or favour with ladies, not to hearken to flatteries, nor conceive I can be beloved by a young woman, et ersque hereditatem captant Odyssea ac vitare, not to be positive or opinionative, not to set up for observing all these rules, for fear that I should observe none. And I think all of us, and perhaps especially men, are prone to tell the same story over and over again, so I think I need to remember that quite a bit. Now, it's been quite changeable, the weather in the last couple of days, so I thought we'd talk a little bit about weather proverbs and folklore, and there's a lot of lovely words in the weather. So, for example, there's the word for when the smell after it rained, which is petrichor. I think it's a great word. But there's also the names of the clouds. So today we've got some nimbostratus, rain-bearing layer cloud, and the other day we had cumulonimbus, which is heaped rain-bearing cloud when it goes up and up into the sky, and you can see a thunderstorm coming and lots of winds and hail. And some of us use these folklore tales. Apparently, according to a meta survey, 3/4 of us use these folklore tales, but about half of us have been caught out by them. So the first one I was going to do was Red Sky at Night, Shepherd's Delight, and obviously this well-known saying is used at sunrise and sunset to signify what the weather's going to be like for the day ahead. And 83% of Brits, according to a Met Office, believe that to be true, and that is in fact true. And that's because high pressure tends to bring good weather when the air is sinking, and it traps dust and dirt in the air and it scatters the blue light, leaving the red light remaining, and you have a day that's going to be good quiet afterwards. And the opposite concurs when it's in the east and it's red sky in the morning, and you know there's probably rain on the way. It can be too cold to snow. Well, apparently the majority of Brits believe this saying, and it's true that the colder the air gets, the less water vapour there is, but in effect, in the UK, it's never really that cold that it won't snow. It's too wet or too mild. So that's always not quite true, that one. Cows lie down when it's about to rain. Well, they've had a number of theories to try and find the truth in this, but the Met Office says there's no scientific evidence at all. And cows lie down for lots of reasons. There's no proof it's got anything to do with rainfall, but I don't know about you, but when I'm walking through a field, I'm quite pleased that the cows are lying down. I'm not really bothered what reason it is, to be honest with you. And finally, pine cones open up when good weather is coming. Well, this is a saying that is actually based on scientific fact, and in dry weather the pine cones dry out and it causes their scales to stand out with a more open appearance, and in wet weather the scales curl up and the cones go to a closed shape. So that one's true. And then finally, rain before 7, fine before 11. And a third of Brits believe that if it's raining at 7 AM, the weather will be fine by 11. And the Met Office says that actually they're often correct, as 4 hours is usually enough time for a weather system to pass, but it doesn't always apply, as we well know. And sometimes the weather front or the weather system sticks around all day and every day, but often you can judge, when you're driving to work, as I am, you know that by midday it might well be dry and sunny. There's a few weather poems for prose for you. Now, 3 people who were affected by the weather were 3 Men in a Boat by Jerome, and they were sailing along, and they were waiting for their seeing what the weather would be. Now there's a bit that I'm going to try and find. Here we are, and this is the bit where Harris is about to launch into a comic song, and he's quite angry and he's got annoyed by landowners who try and block access to the river along the River Thames, and people who put barbed wire fences across and don't let the boat owners join in. And he's deciding that he's going to one of the things he's going to do is sing a comic song. So I'll read that track from 3 Men in a Boat. I was vexed to hear Harris go on in this bloodthirsty strain. We never ought to allow our instincts of justice to degenerate into mere vindictiveness. It was a long while before I could get Harris to take a more Christian view of the subject, but I succeeded at last, and he promised me that he would spare the friends and relations at all events. I would not sing comic songs on the ruins. You've never heard Harris sing a comic song, or you would understand the service I'd rendered to mankind. It was one of Harris's fixed ideas that he can sing a comic song. The fixed idea, on the contrary, among those of Harris's friends who've heard of him try, is that he can't, and never will be able to, and that he ought not to be allowed to try. When Harris is at a party and is asked to sing, he replies, "Well, I can only sing a comic song, you know," and he says it in a tone that implies that his singing of that, however, is a thing that you ought to hear once and then die. "Oh, that is nice," says the hostess. "Do sing one, Mr. Harris." And Harris gets up and makes the beaming cheeriness of a generous-minded man who's just about to give somebody something. "Now, silence, please, everybody," says the hostess, turning round. "Mr. Harris is going to sing a comic song." "Oh, how jolly," they murmur, and they hurry in from the conservatory and come up from the stairs and go and fetch each other from all over the house and crowd into the drawing room and sit round, all smirking in anticipation. Then Harris begins. "Well, you don't look for much of a voice in a comic song. You don't expect correct phrasing or vocalisation. You don't mind if a man does find out, when in the middle of a note, that he is too high and comes down with a jerk. You don't bother about time. You don't mind a man being 2 bars in front of the accompaniment and easing up in the middle of the line to argue out with the pianist, and then starting the verse afresh. But you do expect the words. You expect a man to never remember more than the first 3 lines of the first verse and to keep on repeating these until it's time to begin the chorus. You don't expect a man to break off in the middle of the line and snigger and say it's very funny, but he's blessed if he can think of the rest of it, and then try and make it up for himself, and afterwards suddenly recollect it when he's got to an entirely different part of the song, and break off without a word of warning to go back and let you have it then and there. You don't? Well, I'll just give you an idea of Harris's comic singing, and then you can judge for yourself." Harris, standing up in front of the piano and addressing the expectant mob. I'm afraid it's a very odd thing, you know. I expect you all know it, you know, but it's the one thing I know. It's the judge's song out of Pinafore. No, I don't mean Pinafore. I mean, you know what I mean. The other thing you know. You must all join in the chorus, you know. Murmurs of light and anxiety to join in the chorus. Brilliant performance of prelude to the judge's song in Trial by Jury by nervous pianist. Moment arrives for Harris to join in. Harris takes no notice of it. Nervous pianist commences prelude over again, and Harris, commencing singing at the same time, dashes off the first two lines of the first Lord song out of Pinafore. Nervous pianist tries to push on with prelude, gives it up, and tries to follow Harris with accompaniment to judge's song after Trial by Jury, finds it doesn't answer, and tries to recollect what he's doing and where he is, feels his mind giving way, and stops short. Harris, with kindly encouragement, "It's all right, you're doing it very well indeed, go on." Nervous pianist, "I'm afraid there's a mistake somewhere. What are you singing?" Harris, "Well, the judge's song out of Trial by Jury, don't you know it?" Some friend of Harris's from the back of the room, "No, you're not, you chucklehead, you're singing the Ambrose song from Pinafore." Long argument between Harris and Harris's friends as to what Harris is really singing. Friend finally suggests it doesn't matter what Harris is singing as long as Harris gets on and sings it. And Harris, with an evident sense of injustice rankling inside him, requests pianist to begin again. Pianist therefore starts prelude to the Ambrose song, and Harris, seizing what he considers to be a favourable opening in the music, begins. Now, those of you who've ever had to go to a bad karaoke will know exactly what that's about, and people who think they might have a talent for singing and actually can't sing at all very well will appreciate that. And so those of you who've done a rhyme time as well will appreciate some of that as well. So I know you've listened to people singing in the pub and you might think, oh my goodness. But I love that, and it's really funny, and that's from Three Men in a Boat by Jerome K. Jerome. Now, finally, I just wanted to tell you about a few radio broadcasts that are going on to do with poetry. I thought you might be interested in them. And now, of all people, and don't be put off by this, of all people, because some of you might not like him, but Frank Skinner does a really good poetry podcast, and it's on Absolute Radio. So if you do a Google search, you'll find it. And he's done about 5 or 6 of them, and he does various poets. And one of the poets he does is Gerald Manley Hopkins, and he talks about his poem The Windhover, and it's a 14-line sonnet, and he talks about that, and it's really what he's got to say about it. So I'd recommend you try those poetry podcasts, and we'll perhaps have some Gerald Manley Hopkins next time I'm doing the poetry slot. Another poetry programme to try is on Radio 4, and that's Poetry Please. It's every Sunday at 4:30. And last week's was by Kathleen Jamie, who's a really good nature writer, and she selected a group of poems which people have been reading to themselves during lockdown, and that's on iPlayer. It's on every Sunday at 4:30. Radio 3 at 10 o'clock this week, the Verb with Ian Macmillan. I'm sure some of you might have come across Ian Macmillan from Barnsley, a really good modern poet. He's quite funny. He's doing a feature on the Ledbury Poetry Festival, which normally takes place at this time of the year, but unfortunately it's had to be cancelled. But the director of that festival will be talking about it and with the poets who would have been there, so that might be worth trying. That's Radio 3 on Friday at 10 p.m. And finally, the last programme I wanted to tell you about was Private Passions, and that's on Radio 3 at 12 midday on Sunday. And this week it features William Seagart, and he's the creator of the National Poetry Day, and the creator of the Poetry Pharmacy, which collects poetry and music, to help your well-being. And I'm pleased to say I've even met William Seagart, and he's a really interesting man. And he chooses poetry and music that he turns to when he's finding things hard going. So that's on Sunday on Radio 3 at midday. So there's some programmes for you that you might wish to try. I thought we'd just finish with some, I know we've read this before, but a bit of fun. So it's Edward Lear, and There Was an Old Man with a Beard. There was an old man with a beard who said it's just as I feared. 2 owls and a hen, 4 larks and a wren have all built their nests in my beard. There we go. So thank you very much for listening to me this afternoon. My apologies for the technical problems, which are actually my fault at the beginning of the sequence. And I hope you can join me. I think I'm back in a fortnight's time actually for more poetry and prose. And I believe Basil is back next Tuesday at 3 o'clock for another session. So thanks very much for joining me, and have a good week. And if you get to listen to some of those poetry programmes, then you can always let us know if you enjoyed them. Thanks very much. Bye.